how do we still improve? How do we feel like we're improving? How do we, just what can we do to adjust? Improving cardio, flexibility, improving your diet.
You wonder why he's so good. Those are so important, and you don't need to leave your house to do that.
It's all about technique. It's all about discipline. The whole point of jiu-jitsu is being able to adapt.
All right. So there's probably a lot of questions on people's mind right now, given the state of things. How can I be maintaining jiu-jitsu? How do I maintain my fitness and health and, other aspects of life when we're all sort of in lockdown here? Yeah. But I figure we can start with jiu-jitsu. How is it that you feel people can be really maintaining that same level of grit and skill without actually being able to physically train with one another?
I think that's a great question. To me, that I'm going to answer it the way that in my experience, I've learned of when there's going to be times when you can't train. And then the question to me is, how do we still improve? How do we feel like we're improving? How do we, just what can we do to adjust? And that's what's great about jiu-jitsu is when I'm training, before we get to the point of saying what do we do in this situation? It's going to be when you train, the whole point of jiu-jitsu is being able to adapt and being creative, right? So what we have to not forget that, that's what's happening when we're sparring in particular. That's definitely what's happening when we're drilling, right? So even when we're warming up, there's I'm shrimping, but someone's shrimping faster than me. Let me just move off to the side. That's adaptation right there. You know what I mean? And it might be small, but know that in jiu-jitsu, we're practicing that all the time. So I think part of the problem is people don't realize that's what we're doing. And so we're always developing this skill, right? So now when it comes to not being able to train, there's this big cutoff. And if your mindset wasn't set in the beginning, it's going to be really difficult to be able to parlay that into this new environment, right? So I think the main focus is adapting, but also you have to understand the situation we're in too. So I think this is a great question for people that, let's say, are forced to not be able to train, whether that's an injury or they're in the middle of buying a home and they can't make it to the gym, shit like that. So that's what's good about it. So I'm going to try to answer it in a way where, what do I like to tell people when they can't train? And then I'll talk about specifically for this current environment, right? So in general, I've actually had many phone calls of friends calling me and hey, I'm going to be deployed to some other place, or I'm going to be put in a situation where there's going to be no jiu-jitsu. I'm on assignment, or I'm hurt, or I've definitely been injured plenty of times where I couldn't get on the mat. And in situations where you're close to the gym, I still recommend people just go back to the gym, sit down, watch, learn technique, especially if you're new. You'll get so much out of technique of the day. You'll get so much out of looking at all the other white belts drilling, be damn, I'm that guy. I look like that. And it's I got to clean this up. So it's always nice to see. And definitely the sparring, because when you're sparring, when you're sparring physically, it's, let's say you're a white belt and you want to get better. It's you are a white belt, and then the person you're going against might be a white belt, blue belt, whatever. If you average off the skill level, it's going to be higher than yours, especially if someone's been training longer than you, but it won't be at its highest potential of say 2 black belts going at it. But when you're sitting out on the sidelines and you're watching, you can choose to see 2 black belts, or a really good purple versus a really good purple, or something like that. And you can see how things look, right? And then be okay, I don't know exactly why or how they look like this, but I know that this is what progression looks like. I'm going to try to replicate this. You know what I mean? So when you're near the gym and you can train, I always say, bro, go back to class. It's still knowledge. I don't like the idea of people saying I can't physically train, so there's no training. It's that is not the case at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And it's funny you bring up white belts and injuries, having just sort of gone through that myself with the torn oblique, for any of the listeners out there, it's probably about like 4 weeks in before I tore an oblique, and basically was just like, shit, what do I do now? But I took your advice, and it was the same then and as it is now, which is just keep coming back to class. Like, just because you can't physically roll doesn't mean you can't actually come and get something out of it just by observing and watching, sort of detaching yourself from the actual action and looking in. And that's exactly what I did. And I actually found a tremendous amount of value in it. So I think, especially as it applies to right now where we're all sort of in lockdown, obviously injury is different because you can't really be doing like any kind of fitness drills or what have you, like shrimping across your kitchen floor, which is something that I've been doing at home. There's still a lot of benefit to the mental aspect of it too. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, like when it comes to, I know I can speak for myself when I know that people progress in different ways, right? Some people excel in a classroom environment, some people don't. Some people excel at being on the job site, and then the foreman's like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Let's just do it. It's like, I don't know how to do it. It's like, well, the guy next to you is going to show you how, so let's just go. You know what I mean? So there's different ways people learn. I know for me, I love jiu-jitsu because it's such a visual sport. Like, ever since I first started jiu-jitsu, you don't need to be a scientist to explain at a base level certain techniques, right? So, I can teach arm bars in like few steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, or I could teach it talking about it for like 30, 40 minutes. You know what I mean? So, but when me as someone who never learned an arm bar, trying to look at it, I have to look at it first. Like, I want to see what's the difference. Like, oh, I noticed this guy's hips are lower. It's contributing to him being able to get a tighter grip on it. So the visual is really important. So when I watched my biggest progress, especially when I was a white belt, one of the little hacks that I did was when you're a white belt, you're constantly thinking like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do here. Like, and if you do know what to do, am I even doing it right? Does it look right? Does it, So what I would do is I would go on YouTube and watch like World Championship finals, black belt division. And I would just watch 2 world-class black belts sparring. And then it let me know the potential of what a roll could look like. Like, wow, he's taking his time. It's like, why isn't he going? It's like, oh, well, there's other things that he's worried about, so he's taking his time right here. Or when are they blasting through things? When are they using this type of movement? So for me, visually, being able to come back to class and watching stuff really helped me out. I have a pretty cool experience, which is like when I was a brown belt training at Milton's, like his original location in Mountain View, and we had a guy named Max, and I think he was a purple at the time, or I think I was a black belt and he was brown belt, something like that. But we're still in the original location. And Max is, a quick breakdown, he's a beast. Like, he was a brown belt, he was really competitive, super smart. I've never seen someone like in the middle of a spar, like correct things in the middle of a spar, like 2 minutes in, 3 minutes in, like he's testing and he's like automatically like, okay, don't do it this way. And then I could see him improving during a spar. That's how good he was. And so I always seen him as like a high level competitor. He just give him more time, he's going to be a world champ one day. That's how I always felt. And then one day he went to a training camp before a big tournament. He went to a training camp at like Atos or something like that. And we all know like Atos is like an insanely competitive school, and they do really well, produce a lot of great guys. And I asked him when he came back after that week-long training camp, I was like, that must have been like a big improvement, like event for you. Like being able to grind with the hardest grinders in jiu-jitsu, like that must have been insane. Like that's what you're hungry for. And then he actually, like he stopped me. I was like, you know what improved my jiu-jitsu? I feel like this past week, my jiu-jitsu has like really took a step up. And I was like, yeah, that's crazy. The training must have been crazy. And he was like, honestly, it wasn't even the training. Like a week-long training session at this hyper camp, it really didn't prepare me for anything. Like it just hard sparring, and that's good. He said when it came to the tournament that weekend, he just sat down and just watched all the black belts fight. And he said, that one day of investing and sitting and watching when I wanted to be out there and compete and all that stuff, and then proceeding a week full of training hard, round after round against killers, I learned more and improved more from sitting and watching that tournament than actually participating, preparing for that tournament. And I was like, holy shit, that makes a lot of sense. It's like the way that people pace, the commitment to the grips that you need to be able to actually hit this shit at the highest level, the timing, the adherence to the rule set, and like the dynamics of coaches and whatever, and how to position yourself so you can like look at the score and listen to your coach while attacking. And like I was like, holy crap, like he broke it down. And so it really reaffirmed the idea of how you improve. And to him it was about watching, and I agreed in the same way. And so it was a big eye-opening like thing to hear that from him. So this is why every time someone says I'm hurt but you're local to your gym, just go to the gym, watch stuff. Like if you're not close to your gym, watch high level guys sparring. At least you get a sense of like what it looks like, what training at that level even looks like. Like one of the things I did recently was I sent a link to a sparring session between BJ Penn and Leo Vieira. Mm-hmm. And then they're in their no-gi, they have no shirts on, there's just sweat everywhere, and they're not going crazy, but you see the pacing that they're using to spar, and it's super chill, but is extremely like technically very sound. And so I sent that to him just observe this roll. Like you don't have to get nuts. Like these are two extremely high level guys doing very basic movement, and then they're pacing themselves, they're taking deep breaths, they're tired, but they're still sparring. Like this is what we need to replicate. Like this will allow you to train longer, further, more rounds, all that stuff.
That's interesting. So, I know we talk about actually going to, other gyms and sort of observing, but in terms of online content, like what's available out there? I mean, I know you and I both know there's no shortage of online content right now, but
yeah,
to those of us who are trying to, I guess, observe the online content, but unfortunately can't, like none of us can really go out and actually, physically try, because there's definitely an association that you need to make physically to certain movements that are important. But in the meantime, like, are there any online resources that you think are better than others for this downtime? What are some of like the main focal areas that I assume it's probably going to depend on your skill level? Like a white belt should maybe focus on observing these foundational core aspects versus, somebody more advanced who can probably dive into some of the more advanced techniques and really get a lot out of observing those. But what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. And this goes back, now I'm going to like shift my brain to like current scenario. Like what happens when you can't train? You are near the gym, but you can't go to the gym, or like you don't like stuff like that. So, and keep in mind that your question is relevant for both scenarios, but in this environment where like our main resource is online stuff, even do people, some schools are doing classes through Zoom and stuff like that. Now, here's the thing, the real major thing about jiu-jitsu is at its core is physical training with someone. You know what I'm saying? So like that is the core. This is why, back to the first section, which is people say, I can't train, so there's no point going to the gym. No, there's many components. But don't forget that this sparring component is not the only component. It's just a major component, but not the only thing. So like when you lose that, you can rely on these other components, right? But in this situation where like you're at home, you're healthy, you have internet, there's all these resources. When I was coming up was like VHS tapes, and then now it's just like you can download an app and it'll break down techniques, right? So there's an insane amount of resources now, and the question is good, is like, so how do I discern the quality of this, or what do you recommend this platform or this resource? Like, what is the best way to consume this online thing? I think the main thing we have to remember is that regarding the components of improvement, the physical aspect is the major thing. and then this like online training thing is a smaller component. It's important. It makes up every single class, but when you just have that and no physical training, it actually makes it really difficult to learn jiu-jitsu. Like it's an interesting thing because obviously this pandemic, like the way that the jiu-jitsu community has adapted and shifted towards, it's really cool. But at the same time, it's like, it's all an experiment and no one's saying this is the most effective. People are saying this is just something to get us by, right? But the perspective that you need to use these resources is like, I think they're playing a bigger role right now than they should be. Like, people talk about it. I've been in seminars before, and everyone that's been in a seminar can sort of agree to this, which is you have an environment where the guy running the seminar is trying to teach as much as he can, and then at the end of it, what ends up happening is at the end of the seminar, there's something for sure that you didn't want to forget, you've forgotten, like no doubt about it. There's just so much information, and so what does that say? It means just because there's an abundance of resources doesn't mean that this is a great time to learn. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to learn. There's resources to help you learn. But without that physical aspect, it makes it really difficult, right?
Yeah, so I guess that begs the question, are there any physical aspects that one can do at home? I mean, I've certainly seen people use their dining room table chairs and make sort of ad hoc sparring and grappling dummies. But in terms of like actual drilling, and this is something that I've found to be really helpful, which is really focused a little bit more on like the actual fitness and flexibility side as opposed to drilling skills. What would be your suggestion there for the physical component that's definitely missing in this lockdown setting?
Dude, that's exactly where I was like heading towards too. Like, and what you're actually talking about, the technical aspects of jiu-jitsu, like improving that, like physically, versus physical like attributes, improving that, right? Like flexibility and stuff like that. I think you hit the nail on the head, dude. Like that's really that's the reality of not only this certain situation, but improving when you can't train, right? So I'll go back to my buddy. He works for the government he won't even tell me the team he's part of. So I'm just like, bro, he's spy doc. But he had to go to
legit.
Yeah, exactly. He had to go to Latin America, and he was stationed in this village with, they don't even have running water. So like, they're not going to have jiu-jitsu. Like there are instances where there's jiu-jitsu in places where it's very impoverished, but he's on assignment. There's no real like commercial industry. Like, it just was impossible, right? Internet's bad, so you can't even get resources like that and stuff like that. So he asked me like, how do I prepare myself? His number one concern, like, how do I prevent myself from losing the things that I've already acquired? Like he was smart enough to gauge his like progress might not be a thing, but how do I not regress? And then it comes back to your physical attributes, dude. Like at the end of the day, jiu-jitsu is a physical thing, just like that physical component of having a partner and needing that feedback. To even participate in that, we're assuming a couple of things. We're assuming that you have a partner willing to train with you. We're assuming that you can spar, like you can, you don't have a broken arm or in a cast or something like that. You know what I mean? So my number one advice is focus on the physical 100%. Like a question someone says is like, do I have to prepare to do jiu-jitsu? It's like, no, jiu-jitsu will get your mind, the knowledge, the physical, it'll come to you. It'll come at once because you're doing everything at once. But if you can't train jiu-jitsu and you want to still progress, and I'm not even saying like, it's not about preventing regression, it's about still progressing, is double down on your physicality for sure. 100%.
Yep.
So that flexibility thing, like if we had all of our resources and we could train and all that, flexibility will improve over time, but not by much. You're not prioritizing flexibility. But at this moment in time, when someone teaches you an amazing flying armbar technique that you've always been wanting to learn, but you have no one or no means to train that, is like, how good is that information for you? I argue that it is helpful to see, so it's possible. But like after a certain point, you're hitting a wall. But what you can do, you have no limit on improving cardio, flexibility, just improving your diet, anything like that. Physical, muscle endurance, muscle mass, getting your diet on point. Like, these are physical things that you can do right now that when you were able to train would have supercharged your progress, but now that you can't train, will still allow you to progress without having to get on your kitchen floor and shrimp it out. You know what I mean?
100%. Although I do recommend shrimping it out on your kitchen floor because it does. It is pretty clean on that on that kitchen floor afterwards. But aside from that, I think there's definitely an important takeaway from what you just said. Like, when all of this is over, and we're all back in the gym, we're going at it again. There's going to be two sets of people. People that show up and are completely winded after a round or two. And there's going to be people that are just like, oh, this is nothing. Cause I've been working on my fitness nonstop for the last 2 or 3 months. I think there's definitely something to be said about that. I don't really think there's going to be much in between, where, you're going to be exactly where you left off when all of this started. You're going to progress in one way or the other. One is going to be bad. One is going to be good. I think it's just a matter of how you take advantage of this time away that, quite frankly, everybody's going through, which how often does that happen where literally nobody can go out and be training right now. It's a very level playing field in that sense. So it's up to us whether or not we want to actually come back on the other side of this better in some aspect or set back. So I think, it's funny that we mentioned flexibility. I've heard, from various places online, flexibility, I'm not going to bother with that. It's all about, stamina, cardio, and actually training the movements. But then you look on, so I follow Hicks and Gracie on Instagram. And constantly, a lot of the stuff that he posts, it's all yoga stuff. It's all flexibility. And you wonder why he's so good. I think that's a really big pillar as to why he's able to get to that level, is because he's focused on things like breathing techniques and flexibility. Those are so important, and you don't need to leave your house to do that.
Yeah, no, you're killing it. Everything you're saying is exactly the perspective that you should have to sort of understand why I'm giving the advice I'm giving, because it's yes, I agree. There's nothing wrong with studying jiu-jitsu technique, strategy, whatever is available online. It's not even a matter of I prefer this resource over this resource. It's just I put it in one bucket, which is just virtual, knowledge building. You know what I mean? There's always benefit in that, but you got to realize that that's available whether you can train or not. And one of the things, so how do I prioritize my time to improve as much as possible, is take the time to improve your cardio. Take the time to do wind sprints or burpees or whatever. Take the time to pick up a kettlebell routine if you've never picked up a weight before. Take the time to practice yoga and practice breathing and mental clarity, especially in a time like this when mental health is I can see, as much as, to be fair, I can see some introverted people like me, loving the break, you know what I mean? But yeah, mental health, big deal. It's a huge issue. And so I strongly believe, and I'll tell you my personal protocol when this is me. I hate to drill. I love to spar. And when I'm training, I'm just biting my nails, when can I spar? When can I spar? When can I spar? Right? And I spar to the point, especially if it's tough training, I might be sore the next day or whatever. I'm not running or lifting during this time at all, right? The cardio that I'm getting is from rolling hard. The strength training I'm getting is it's not even my focus, but as I get sore from training hard, endurance will increase and all this other stuff. It's part of the package, but what I'm trying to do is be effective on the mat. So that my number one priority. When you can't spar, you're only left with the physical aspect that's left, right? And so for me, what I like to do is it's all about, I pick up jogging. like I prioritize cardio over muscle endurance and muscle strength, because it usually takes like 2 months, something like that, for you to see progress and gains. But with cardio, you can see it a lot quicker. And so like, I'm all about the cardio. Right now, my current workout is some core workout, some posterior chain improvement, and I'm using kettlebells as a form of cardio. So I don't have to go outside and like get coughed on. You know what I mean? I'm like in the backyard with the kettlebell, just doing like cardio technique. And so that's going to be the key, because I'm imagining my first class back, and I don't want to be running a class where I'm huffing and puffing, and then like I can't even get through the technique, right? So like, there's the physical aspect to me is a bigger player when you can't get on the mat. And because of that, you have a unique opportunity to not only prevent regression, but actually improve in areas where you needed to improve anyway. You know what I mean? So to me, that's like the biggest component.
For sure. What are some of the main, I guess, kettlebell movements that you do? I mean, I've been using a kettlebell. I've been using a sandbag instead. But for kettlebell, like, what are some of those key core movements that you would recommend? You know, if you do the same movement 100 times in a day and nothing else, like that's still a really big difference you're making.
Yeah.
By instead of just sitting on the couch eating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you can do anything physical like 100 push-ups a day or 100 Hindu squats a day, and then you just be obliterated. You know what I mean? That's pretty badass. And so for me, regarding kettlebell swings, I am not a kettlebell expert. I'm not certified in it. And I have my own goals with kettlebells, but the reality is that anyone who takes kettlebells a little bit seriously knows that technique is everything, right? So focus on workouts that you focus on the technique, or focus on workouts that allow you to build that technique. So to me, it's always about fundamental kettlebell movements, which is the swing, clean, like arm thrusters, where you mount it to your chest, and then you lift up to a press, you go down and do a squat, come back up. Then there's snatches. I like to do snatches all the way to the top. That gets my heart going the most. And then Turkish get-ups. And like those 4 right there, you can build an insane workout just with that 4. You know what I mean? And so I just do 16 kilograms. I'm one-handed, so I switch it. So it sort of like creates like this circuit where I'm supersetting and then going immediately to the next thing. So it's not about weight. It's about movement and keeping the heart rate up. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to focus in on.
And for those people that can't handle the metric system, so I think 16 is 20 pounds. 16 kilos is 20 pounds.
Yeah, 16 kilos is like 35 pounds, something like that.
Oh, I was off.
You're good.
I see. Clearly, I can't handle a metric system. So those are definitely solid. And one thing that you said to me really stands out, which is you got to make sure that you're actually using the right form.
Yes.
Being careful. If you're not careful doing kettlebell swings, it is so easy to blow out your back. I feel that. Yeah. I mean, like it's got to be like upper back and legs. If you let that thing swing and you're trying to stop it with your lower back.
Oh, 100%.
Seek guidance.
I have lower back injuries, so this is actually like from barbell training actually. And so like the kettlebell allows me to be able to swing a weight without having to put a lot of pressure. But dude, I'm focused on breathing, holds, like expanding the core, tightening the core, and just so you're right. It's all about technique there. And what's good is it gives you a little bit of discipline. It's something that we should talk about eventually, which is like areas in which I'm a big believer technique over everything, right? And you need discipline when it comes to technique. And I love doing activities that instill that. And with kettlebells, it's all about technique. It's all about discipline. make sure breathing's on point, the timing of the rep and the breath and all this other stuff. So that's something we should definitely talk about later for sure.
I agree. And on that topic, like it's sort of, I just made this connection in my head that, we're talking about, oh, we can't actually drill techniques and we can't, you can't be sparring and all of that. But the action of focusing on technique and something else,
yeah,
directly translates into your ability, your aptitude for focusing on technique when we're back in the gym. So being able to practice focusing on technique, focusing on breathing and your movements, being able to just, even if it's not jiu-jitsu related, being able to actually develop that aptitude for focusing on technique, breathing, repetition, movement. I personally, I think translates directly into, what jiu-jitsu is, in a sense where, you're focusing on your breath, you're focusing on your technique, on your movements. And I think that, again, this is definitely, like you said, this is definitely a topic in its own.
Yeah.
Especially as we dive into like the book Musashi.
Yeah.
Which, and actually, you know what? We'll save it.
Yeah.
Pocket that.
Yeah. I mean, like,
but yeah,
I see it the other way around too. Like when I did jiu-jitsu, I started when I was like 13, 14. So like there wasn't much in my life at that time that was teaching me the importance of technique. Like what I was doing was I skateboarded for years. Like that's something people don't know about me, but like I would go skate parks. I watched all the DVD, like the VHSs at the time, Rodney Mullen, Did One Song, all that shit, right? And skateboarding was crazy because it's all about technique to get you going, to do a kick flip, to do a heel flip, to do whatever. And then once you progress in jiu-jitsu, now it's about the heart. It's about how fast can you go down these sets of stairs and all this other shit, right? So when I did jiu-jitsu, that was the closest comparable, but I never made the connection between my brain, right? So for me, it's like jiu-jitsu, there's no better place than to talk about technique than in jiu-jitsu, right? Because jiu-jitsu is a rare opportunity where you can actually submit someone bigger than you, submit someone that's really strong or much younger than you or anything like that. So you realize that technique can carve through a lot of other bullshit, right? And then so for me, growing up, realizing this, I applied that mentality to every other aspect of my life. Like, for instance, like I'll give you a small example that you could probably relate to. Like I grew up cooking at home when I was a kid. I cooked with my mom, right? Her focus was about getting it done. So she was rough chopping onions and potatoes, you know what I mean? Like all this stuff. And she's been cooking her whole life. And then, but once I realized that there is something called knife technique, and like when you have an onion, there's a certain way to prep it so it sits on the cutting board. There's a way to put slices through it, so when you chop it, it's already like in the perfect shape that you want. And depending on how a vegetable is like created, it tells you how to cut it, right? Like how to cut a bell pepper, it's very different than how you cut an onion, right? And so when you break down that technique at that level, you can do amazing shit, right? But with my mom, she was just focused on getting the food out, because we got a bunch of boys hungry, you know what I mean? And so she spent her whole life not focusing on the technique of the individual components of building a meal, but she was more focused on getting it done. So she was awesome at picking ingredients off the cupboard and making that awesome dish out of it. No recipe. I've never seen her look at a recipe. Amazing. But for me, with that technique mindset from jiu-jitsu and trying to apply it to other areas of my life, now when it comes to cooking, like I need a particular type of knife. Like I don't want to cut an onion with a petty knife or something, like a very small, intricate knife. I need something bigger. I need, like, you know what I'm saying? So it elevated the quality of the food that I eat. It elevated my understanding of food when I received food on the plate. Like it allowed me to appreciate so much more, but also allowed me to improve just what I ate, what I understood, how much appreciation I have for this, something like that, right? So as much as the lessons you learned in life can help you approach jiu-jitsu in a particular way. I actually do it the opposite too. Like, you can use jiu-jitsu as a tool to develop the mindset you need to progress in jiu-jitsu, but don't get it twisted. Try to move that over to the real life, and then it will improve you in many other ways too, right? So I love that. I love that dynamic. This way going this way. I love that shit. We can definitely talk about it deeper, but yeah,
100%.
I just want to talk about it like that. Yeah, technique for sure.
100%. Yeah, and I think going back to what our original topic was, which is, what can people be doing during this downtime to improve their game, to to stay focused and make sure that they're, the pillars that they built, the foundation that they built in a jiu-jitsu gym actually rolling and drilling technique. Like, how can we make sure that that doesn't go for nothing? Like, what can we be doing? I think that's such a great point to make, which is, if you take those same principles and focus them on something else. I mean, maybe it's directly, like, it's something that's directly translatable to jiu-jitsu, like fitness.
Yeah.
Where you're focusing on really taking care of technique and your breathing and mastery through repetition. That's so valuable when we all come out of this, because, like I said, we're all on a level playing field right now, and there's going to be two types of people when we come back. There's going to be the people that have been focusing on sitting on their couch, eating, moping around, and missing the gym and like really not doing much of anything. And then there's going to be the people that spent this time focusing on mastery of like one simple singular technique and improving their fitness. So when we come back, you're not dead 2 rounds into a sparring match. It's such a good point. And I think to anyone listening, like, to me, that's probably the best thing that we can all be doing right now. I think you also said, like, watching videos of different techniques and drills, it's good, but to a certain extent, like, there's limitations to that. Great point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And like, I think it's, we talked about little things, and I love the way you was able to summarize, and I'll try my best to summarize my perspective on it too, which is like, yes, resources, use them, but when I pull up my Instagram feed and then people are doing Zoom, I love that, because it's adaptation, and they're trying to make sure people are getting better. They're trying to make sure that jiu-jitsu is still part of life. You know what I mean? And I love that. But when you think about progress and then focus on that, I always talk about in the gym, it's not about getting the next belt. It's not about beating that guy. It's not about the other guy. It's about you. It's about progress. If you feel like you're growing, you're good. You know what I mean? And sometimes to grow, you have to do something you like. You feel me? So like, there's a lot of people that are in the pursuit of growth doing something that they don't like. But when it comes to jiu-jitsu, no, you guys aren't getting paid to do jiu-jitsu, bro. You know what I mean? You are paying to do jiu-jitsu. So what does that mean? It means you have to be happy first. And so like, if when it comes to the drilling online, and I'm going to get on a Zoom, and then I'm going to have everyone do shrimps and then teach them techniques without actually sparring or whatever. It's like I said in the beginning, it's like, I love seeing that, but at the same time, I don't know if it's the most appropriate thing. You feel me? Like, I think what's more appropriate is, there's so many resources online. Boom. You can reach out to that if you want, but focus on the physical. You know what I mean? Like, focus on getting your cardio up, focus on getting your just endurance up, stand out in the sun, let the sun like kiss you a little bit. You feel me? Like, those things really do a good thing. I know that you go on hikes with your dog and like go on walks and stuff like that. That's awesome. Yeah. That dog shouldn't suffer for pandemic. You know what I mean? Like,
no, they don't. They're spoiled.
Yeah. And then so like you can go out there, get a fresh air, and the mental break is important too. Some people just want a mental break, and that's cool. But now is an opportunity, in particular, in general, when you can't train, the other aspects that are part of training, which is the physical side, should be something that should be emphasized. And it doesn't have to be death metal in the background and then putting up PRs. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about being active, staying loose, keeping your air up, all that stuff. Like, it's something I struggle with too, but it's the first thing I go to when I can't train. I immediately look for a treadmill. If I can't get a treadmill, I'm looking at my kettlebells and then making something happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Another great point. And like, I guess some closing thoughts on my side, like you don't even need fancy equipment to do this.
Yeah.
Like you can sit there on any hard floor in a 5, or even on the grass, 5 foot by 5 foot space and do mountain climbers. And that's extraordinarily effective in building core muscle and flexibility in your hips. You could be doing push-ups, dips. You can go for a run outside. Like, any of these things, they don't require additional equipment and whatever. It's a matter of mental discipline. Like, do you have what it takes to actually do this every day? Like, but at the same time, like if you're doing jiu-jitsu regularly and you're training every week, like you're there at least multiple times a week, the discipline should be there. You have it in you. You have what it takes.
Yeah, it's easy, it's attainable, and we're like, you and me, we're regular dudes. I'm no athlete. You know what I mean? Like there are guys that can walk around and just look at a weight and look amazing. You know what I mean? Like I'm not an athlete, but what I do is the workout is so I can make sure I am not huffing and puffing on that first class back. It's so the workout is so I've gained weight during this shutdown, but I would have gained more if I didn't. If I didn't work out. You feel me? So it's not even, the bar isn't that high is what we're saying. You know what I mean? Like you can focus on these, like get your jiu-jitsu fix, but know that real jiu-jitsu progress on the mat progress is more, you're going to get more progress through the physical means that will transfer over to the mat versus directly mat related work. Because again, we don't have partners. You know what I'm saying? Like you can have drill buddy, but I'm talking about the timing involved in sparring and like switching your hips when off of reactive, techniques and stuff like that. So those things are going to be more difficult to improve, but I know guys that would benefit from running maybe like 2 miles twice a week. That will make them much more effective on the mat than doing like these drills, these solo drills that I'm seeing. You know what I'm saying? Like the problem with the solo drills is their focus is to get your cardio up, physicality up, but with a component of building these skills. But it's like some of these are not pushing you enough to actually push your physical, and the movements themselves are something that you might not even be needing, in your jiu-jitsu. Because like there's a pass drill, and like I don't even do that pass, but I should be doing this. It's like I don't necessarily believe that. So the physical is the thing, and like it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu related, but jiu-jitsu relatable skills, like you said, emphasis on technique. You know what I mean? Like mindset, like disciplined in what you're doing, not just doing things willy-nilly. Because if you approach your entire life doing willy-nilly, like throwing frozen peas from a bag in your pan and then turning on the fire and then looking through the fridge and like, what else can I, if that's the way you approach almost everything, your jiu-jitsu is going to sort of be as chaotic and brutish in that way too. So if you're mindful of technique as a thing to take your life forward, you're going to apply that to jiu-jitsu 100%, and that is where it will freaking shine. You know what I mean? So that's it's the mental side of it too.
For sure. It's funny. You made a lot of connections between cooking and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something else that we should definitely touch on, because you're right. There's a lot of connections in the methodology of cooking and becoming a good cook.
There's so
becoming good at jiu-jitsu.
I see such the comparable in cooking. I don't know why people don't talk about it. I feel like I've never heard anybody talk about the comparison of cooking and jiu-jitsu. But, when you think about being on the line in you're a line cook at a very poppin' Manhattan bistro, you know what I mean? Like you need discipline. There is a system. There is a hierarchy. There's level of skill and knowledge. There is actually getting the job done, but there's also technique and being clean and not wasting, not being wasteful. And there's just so many components of cooking in that environment and even just high level cooking in general, restaurant level, is like that is completely transferable to jiu-jitsu, because when you're doing jiu-jitsu, there's so many dynamics and you have to be mindful. And if you're not mindful, you'll sink. You know what I'm saying? And it's the same thing in that world too. So I mean, I love it. You're going to hear me use a lot of that shit.
Yeah. I think we definitely have to have an episode here where we go into it in deep detail. Because I think there's definitely a lot of connections to be made, and you know, I'm happy to share some of my past experience in that.
Absolutely.
Being a classically trained French chef, or classically trained in French cuisine, but like seeing all the different sort of calibers, and you know, I've worked in chain restaurants, but I've also worked in really nice restaurants, and there's a vast difference.
Yes.
There's a lot of connection to be made there. We'll touch on it.
Okay.
Maybe we'll each have some food in front of us while we do it, just for.
We get to the point of doing mukbangs?
For sure, man. All right. Well, listen. I think this was really helpful. Hopefully, it's helpful for whoever listens to this, but it was definitely helpful for me to sort of
awesome.
You know, refocus. There's, with all the noise out there and all like the different possibilities of what people should be focusing on during this time of lockdown and away from the mats. I think this was extremely helpful in sort of refocusing what's important and what we all can be doing to make sure that when we all do come back and meet up on the mats again, that we're prepared and that we're ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think the main thing is like, I'm a guy who's been doing jiu-jitsu for over 15 years now. And one of the things about jiu-jitsu is like, and it's a topic I actually wanted to talk about, is about like people, it's celebrated to be addicted to this game. You know what I mean? And people do get addicted, right?
Yeah.
But don't be jiu-jitsu centric, be growth centric. Think about growth overall. And so when you think about growth, you start to cut through the bullshit of like being in this vicious cycle of like, technique is like, well, can you spar that technique? Is like, no. But if it's not sparring, if it's not jiu-jitsu related, I'm not worried about it. It's like, man, there's so many things that jiu-jitsu can help you in your life, and that life can help in your jiu-jitsu. You need both. And so like, take the time now. Is like, look at those resources, but focus on your physical, focus on your family dynamics, focus on your friends, talk to people, like stand outside on the sun, step on some grass. You feel me? Like I'm not really into the whole hippie thing, but it's just like being stuck in a room is not the healthiest thing for sure. You know what I mean? So
no, it's definitely not.
Yeah. So there's so many different things, and you know, there's benefits to doing things that are not directly BJJ related that will help your BJJ 100%. So focus on that. And jiu-jitsu, yes, jiu-jitsu, you need it, but don't be so, to the folks that I see a lot of folks, especially beginners, when this shit shut down, they were caught dead heat of that addiction. You know what I mean? And then so they're putting on the gi and then like doing Hindu squats. I'm like, bro, it's like, do you really need that gi on? You know, it's like, I get if it's a joke, but holding on to those lapels while you're doing air squats is not really, it's not making the impact that people would like to see. You feel me? So
it's funny.
It's just get a workout in, stay loose, you know, do something,
for sure,
develop a skill. You know what I mean? Like hit some milestones that you now can hit because you're not in the gym all the time. So that's
a podcast.
Really my advice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. No, I hear you. And I hope people heed those words. You know, there's a lot of good to be done during this time where we're all in lockdown. Just, you know, obviously remember the guidelines on social distancing. Stay away from people as much as you can, and focus on the fitness aspect. You know, we'll all get through this. But we all want to get through this healthy. We want to be better on the other side, and you know, get back to training.
It's crazy. I just think about all the people affected, and it's like businesses affected, mine included. It's like, damn. So I'm hoping this we make it through. Yeah. So yeah,
we'll get through it. I know we will.
cool. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. At the end of the day, all Daniel and I want to do is just have a conversation. But at the same time, if we can help answer any questions, we'd love to hear it. So reach out to me at Baem Jiu Jitsu, BAEM Jiu Jitsu on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, wherever. DM me there if you have a topic you'd like for us to cover, a question that you'd like to ask, and we're happy to do it. Talk to you guys soon. That's all I got.